but essentially every day I've been giving him a half of a peanut.
Which is insane.
It is going to be harder and more work and more draining than you could ever expect. I just knew.
Yeah.
Like I knew, like my stomach dropped and I said, yeah, here we go.
Hi.
Hello.
And welcome to EpiPod. Sarah is a mom to 2 little boys with food allergies.
And Danielle has navigated life-threatening allergies her entire life.
Living with an invisible health condition is so isolating.
The fear and the anxiety.
Trying to cover it up so you don't affect anybody else.
Especially your kids.
Phew.
Sound familiar?
Join us on the couch and take a load off with people who just get it.
We're so glad you're here.
EpiSode 5.
Here we go.
Here we go. We're doing it.
I can't believe it.
By the time, we haven't launched yet, but by the time you guys hear this, we will be live.
Yeah.
Many episodes in.
We'll have had 4 episodes, but then 2 weeks of like episodes coming out. So that's really exciting.
I feel like, so we dropped the trailer the other day, and before we get going, I just want to say thank you to all of you guys for all of your support.
Yes, the early excitement is really cool to see because, you know, there's a lot of people saying like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, a big
I've been
sigh.
waiting for this. Mm-hmm. And I think we knew that, but to hear it said out loud or to, you know, read it in a comment, so many comments, it really, to me, is like, all right, this is where we're supposed to be.
Yeah. Every time we hang out, I feel like I've explained to my family, the metaphor is you're like a life raft. I'm like, she's the only person who understands me. Like she's the only person who takes the allergies as seriously as I do, but also wants to live as big of a life as I want to. And I just think that that's really special, and that's what we want to be for everyone listening.
Yeah.
So thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting us.
Yes.
Today we are diving into Graham's treatment, all about being at SoCal Food Institute and what a TIP family looks like. Last week we talked about OIT and OIT as an adult with me.
Yes. And I think we thought originally that was going to be one episode, that we were just going to do like a treatment episode. Yeah. But what happened is
I couldn't stop crying.
Well,
yeah.
Yes. But also that there was so much to talk about. Yeah. And there were so many different kind of things that were important to bring up and to go through, and your experience has been so up and down that I think it's really helpful for someone who's considering it to hear all of that said, and it needed to breathe and live on its own. So I'm so glad we did it that way. And then now it's like part 2.
And the programs are so different that they really do deserve, like you can't sum it up
lump
quick.
Them together. No. I agree.
Yeah.
So
before we dive in, let's catch up, talk about our weeks.
Okay.
And
I've had a doozy of a day. I've been saying I'm on an emotional hangover roller coaster right now.
We almost didn't even record today because of what happened with treatment last night.
Yeah. Last night was a really, really big day. I mean, we were to updose peanut. So we've been doing an actual peanut, like a half of a peanut for the last 3 weeks since we got back from our last trip. And we'll go into all the details of treatment, but essentially every day I've been giving him a half of a peanut.
Which is insane. Like to have Planters peanuts, like roasted peanuts on your counter in your pantry.
Yes.
For an anaphylactic food allergy kid is like, I mean, unimaginable.
I used to go through the grocery store and just when I see the peanuts, I like hated them.
Oh, I still do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I won't, like if the chips that I want are on the shelf next to the peanut aisle, if it's like a new grocery store and I just stop by on a random store on my way home, I'm like, oh, I don't want those chips anymore. Mm-mm. Like that's how much the aversion is.
And you know in your head that is not like scientifically accurate, you know, like there's no reason you can't eat those chips next to those peanuts.
Totally.
But the mental game that you have to play with yourself, like the mountain that you have to push yourself off of in order to make those choices, even if they're logical, like it's very hard to do that.
You're conditioned that this is life or death because it is. Stay away from it. So like just seeing something in front of you at a grocery store, you're like, maybe I won't go down that aisle. Maybe I'll go to the produce.
It's so true. Yeah. And then to have them sitting on my countertop, it's like, I'm sorry, this is not my life. Like this is
reprogramming.
Yes.
Everything you've ever lived and breathed for the past Graham's whole life.
Right. And so, you know, at the same time, like in my very next breath, I would tell you, we have worked up so slowly over the last 2 years to get to this point that I shouldn't be that afraid. And I have gotten, I say shouldn't, I'm allowed to feel the way I feel.
You are.
But I don't feel as terrible, I think, as I would have obviously 2 years ago. Like I knew this was coming. I had a lot of time to prepare for it. It's still very hard, but you know, going from a half of a peanut to a full peanut, which was our up dose last night, I just had this feeling all day, like in my gut, of nerves, like this.
Yeah, you were texting me starting in the morning.
Yeah,
being like, it's a big day. I am nervous.
Yeah,
I'm about to do it. Like the whole day you felt this way.
And you know me, like it's not that I'm never nervous. I'm just not usually someone who walks around filled with anxiety. Like I can normally talk myself off the edge. And last night I chalked it up to Mark's out of town and I knew I was going to be doing it by myself. So I did do things like have people on standby in the neighborhood, you know, to run over if I needed, in the worst case scenario, in the off chance that something happened is what I kept telling myself. But also I think I did it for a reason. I think I had those people lined up and I had those nerves for a reason, because, you know, ultimately he did have a reaction. I stood at the counter trying to like go give him that full peanut for 10 minutes. And I did record myself because I felt like that was a moment that like so many people who are in treatment with their child or themselves, they have to get through it too. So like I wanted to really show like, okay, I'm picking it up. No, not ready. Putting it down. Yep. Picking it up, putting it down, picking it up, like looking to the side. Oh, maybe I need to go change over the laundry. Oh, you know what? I'm going to wash this dish real quick.
Totally.
Because
I've been there.
Yeah. I had to like really work up the courage. And so I finally did. He eats it right now with like a little marshmallow, a mini marshmallow.
It's like a sandwich.
Yeah. And I, you know, and I walked over to him and I was like, we had already done his yogurt dose. And I was like, okay, like, here you go. And, you know, he's just watching TV. He's supposed to chill out. So I, you know, just gave it to him. He's used to it at this point. And
he knows what treatment is.
Yeah. He put it in his mouth and, it's funny looking back, I have a video of him doing it and he kind of like lingered for a moment on his mouth, like, you know, just distracted eating, like, and sure enough, when he had the reaction and what the reaction was last night, it was not anaphylaxis, thank the Lord, but it was, you know, his lip started to swell in that one place. And now looking back, I see the video and I'm like, that's where he was kind of like hanging out with it for a moment. So I'm sure it was like some skin contact there. But yeah, I mean, I feel better now than I did, obviously, like this morning when I woke up after a rough night of checking on him nonstop. We gave him the medicine and he was fine. He's at school today.
You were able to call the provider.
Yeah.
I think if you're just joining us and you're not familiar with treatment, I mean, up until I met you a couple of years ago, I didn't know that this was even possible. Like hearing a child with a severe peanut allergy being given a peanut by their mother, I would be like, what?
What is she doing?
Yeah,
Child endangerment.
This is a personalized program, a lot of blood tests, skin tests, countless appointments, years of building up with biosimilar foods have led you to this point.
Right.
So to be clear with that.
Yes.
And also,
we'll get into all of that.
Yes, we will. That's what the whole episode will be about. But there's also an action plan. So when you texted me and you were like, oh my gosh, like a reaction is happening. Yeah. Like, can you be on standby? I was like, car keys in hand, like ready to go. Yeah. But I was like, okay, she's going to call the hotline.
For sure. Yeah.
So can you explain like, when you say the medicine, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, and I guess I should back up a little bit too and say like, I'd given it to him. I walked away. I was just probably prepping something else in the kitchen or cleaning up. And like, all of a sudden he said, the first thing I heard him say was, mommy. And literally initially, like he said the word mommy in a certain way, in a certain pitch or something. And I was like, okay. It's coming, like something's happening. He's about to say something. He said, my lip hurts. And I just knew.
Yeah.
Like, I knew, like, my stomach dropped, and I said, yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Everything that I thought all day long, you know, my nervousness all day long, my gut feeling, here it is, coming to fruition. And he's like, yeah, I think there's a bump on it. And, you know, as I'm walking over there, and, you know, I look down, and yeah, his little lip is just swelling, and it was like a hive at first, and then it kind of got like a little bulgier, and it looked like a fat lip, you know, almost like he had been kind of like hit there. And so then I'm scanning his body, you know, looking everywhere else. How are you feeling? Let me check your throat, you know, all the things, trying to remain calm because I'm not trying to freak him out, you know? And at this point, he doesn't necessarily always connect. Like, he knows what we're doing. He's very smart. I mean, also, we should say, like, the fact that a 5-year-old knows ahead of time before your lip or as your lip is swelling, like, mommy, something's not right. Like, my lip is hurting. Like, so much maturity and like body intelligence that he has at this young age. But, you know, he doesn't necessarily, I don't think, realize like, okay, like I could have a reaction from my dosing.
This could land me in the hospital. I might not be okay. Like he doesn't have that sort of trauma connection yet. He
doesn't. And I'm so glad for that.
Totally.
So I was trying to maintain like myself in that moment, but obviously was very hard to do. So yes, getting back to the medication. So I immediately, first thing I did, while I knew it wasn't like a dire moment, like he was breathing fine, you know, so I felt like I didn't need to immediately call 911 or call the provider. I did pretty much immediately, but like not in that the first thing I did, because I was alone, was I called my friend Lindsay, who lives in the neighborhood, and said she was one of the ones on standby. And I said, she's like, she picked up and she said, is everything okay? And I said, no, like you need to come over. Or I don't even think I said need to come over. I think she was like, I'm on my way. Yeah. And hung up and came over. And I texted you and, you know, tried to get in touch with Mark real quick to let him know what was going on. Of course, he was like in the mountains on his mountain bike and like out of service. I'm like, come on. Not his fault, just like the world. I'm like, come on. Yeah. And then the very next call was to providers. Yeah. So I called them. What's awesome about the Tolerance Induction Program, which again, we've talking a long time and we haven't gotten there yet, but the Tolerance Induction Program is the program that Grandma's in. And it's at the Food Allergy Institute. They used to be called the Southern California Food Allergy Institute, and they've since rebranded because they are expanding, which is so cool, exciting, outside of Southern California. But they have a fantastic reaction line, meaning like after hours or during hours, there's a number to call and somebody picks up immediately. You tell them briefly what's going on, then they connect you to a actual like medical provider that has his chart up, you know, knows his history, asks the right questions, and immediately tells you what to give him. So we have a little pack, medical pack that has scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3 medicine. And obviously an epinephrine auto-injector is part of that third option. And, you know, depending on how it's progressing, you can go from 1 to 3 or, you know, whatever needed.
They guide you through it.
Yes. But they tell you exactly, you know, they ask you the questions, they tell you what to take, they tell you how long to wait. They message you kind of what you talked about on the phone in an email, and then within an hour, if you haven't given them an update, they either call or email you back and say what's going on. And yeah, and then they actually emailed again this morning and said, how is he? You know, they're checking up on him. The program has grown a lot. And so I think some people worried, like, are they going to lose their kind of like boutique customer care? Which when you're in an emergency situation, like you need that kind of support. Yes. Minutes matter. Yeah. And every single time I've ever needed them, it has been fantastic service. And this is not like an ad for them, but it is like something I very much appreciate. And I think, again, if you're going to be a allergist office that does OIT or TIP, whatever it might be, you have to have
systems in place.
Yes. Yeah. And so I was very grateful for that. And, you know, he went to school today. He result, he still has a little bump on his lip.
So you only did scenario 1?
Yes.
Okay.
Only
so like the
1.
least severe.
Yes.
And it started to get better.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, like, I think it was even less like, well, number one, I think that one of the scariest things is you don't know when the progression will stop. Like,
I know.
Is it going to just be the swollen lip? Or is he going to start having hives, which he did have some on his arm. I think probably the hand that he had touched the peanut with, he had scratched his arm. And so then he had hives on his arm. But it wasn't like full body hives. He didn't start saying, oh, my stomach hurts. He didn't vomit. He, didn't have any like scratchy throat or.
Thank God he doesn't have the anxiety trauma bridge built yet, because then you can clearly get a sense of like, does your stomach hurt, or are you so worried you've made yourself sick?
Right.
Like, does your throat feel off, or are you having a panic attack?
Yep.
Like, that is such a blessing.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I'm worried we're losing part of that, or about to be. Like, he's getting older. He's about to turn 6, and he did ask, he said, so wait, I have this bump on my lip because of the peanut that I just ate. Like,
and how do you, like, do I lie to him or do I not? Like, do I lie to preserve his, as long as I can, or do I
didn't lie.
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't judge anyone who did, because again, having that kind of innocence and unknowingness has been very helpful. But I think I also need to maintain
trust you,
some trust in our relationship. And so I did tell him, I said, that sometimes this can happen, if your body is not quite ready, or if something else happens, and just kind of really kept it like high level and like light in my voice, and kind of like moved on to the next topic. Obviously, if he had other questions, I would answer them, but he just kind of accepted and kept watching his show. So
Sarah, you are the best mom.
Thank you.
You are doing such an amazing job. And like, what you're doing takes a steel gut and like such trust in yourself. And as an adult with food allergies, I would have given my left arm, truly, anything to have been offered, not only for like a program to exist like that when I was Graham's age, but like you and Mark, both financially and mostly time-wise, like you have given everything that you guys have to this program, and it's taken everything. And like, just know, as somebody who lives the reality, who didn't get that, like you are giving him the world. And so everything that you're going through, and like the tough, terrifying days, like last night, like there is nothing I wouldn't give to have had that. Yeah. Like, you are just the best mom.
Thank you.
And he is so lucky.
Thank you. I won't lie. Like, it is so much. It is so hard. It has taken over our entire life.
Yeah.
But to hear you say that does make me feel like, not that I didn't already know that it's going to be worth it and a good thing, and like it's going to open up his life, but like to hear it from your perspective is really important, because it makes you want to push through those hard times and to keep going for him and for us. I mean, everything we've put into it, everything that our lives have the potential to be, versus kind of
where you're at,
the slightly more closed life that we live now.
I mean, treatment is not for everybody.
No.
It's not for every child. It's not for every adult. I am currently in the throes of trying to figure out if it's for me, because of how much anxiety I have, and because of how much it is. I feel like it's like taking a chunk out of my mental health, my personality, everything.
Yeah.
Like it is so hard. So it's not for everybody. It's not like, treatment for whatever reason isn't for my family. That's okay. Like, that might be the case.
Yeah.
But just seeing, like, Graham is like a little superhero to me. Like, seeing just how much y'all's lives have changed because of clearing cross contact for Peanut.
Yes.
And seeing how much your lives have changed with clearing milk.
Yeah.
And like you being able to eat eggs or milk for breakfast.
Wild.
I'm like,
Yeah.
The fight is like truly the battle of all battles, but to see just the wins that you guys have already accomplished, life-changing.
And I think, somebody messaged me that and said, think about it this way. And sometimes I'm a little annoyed when somebody's not just like, I feel it. Yeah. Like I'm sorry. This is really hard. This sucks. Like, you want to hear that in that moment. And that's what I try to do for other people
too. It's like toxic positivity. And like, you don't know what it's like trying to figure out whether your child needs an EpiPen or not tonight. Like, I don't want to hear, look at it this way.
And I think that is part of it, that like, it depends on who it comes from.
Yeah.
Because I did hear that from some people who don't understand. And it was a harder, like, I was just like, okay, gotta go. But this particular comment that I was about to talk about is from an actual fellow tip mom who has been through it, who does this every day too. And one thing she said, and it stuck with me, and I did appreciate it, is like, yes, this is hard. However, his reaction was a swollen lip after eating an entire peanut. A year ago, 2 years ago, a quarter or less of that same peanut could have killed him.
Totally.
So like, it was like I know these things, but to hear it like, or, read it written out like that, like, yes, this sucks. This is really hard. But like the progression that has been made, the fact that all he did have was swollen lip and some hives from eating an entire peanut. Are you kidding me?
Wild. His body handled it. Like, even though it was a reaction, like, it's still obviously working.
Yeah. And that was huge.
Yeah.
So yes, I am still feeling very just, I don't know, deflated.
Totally.
Scared about having to start back up again. I will definitely be waiting till Mark gets home to give him another full peanut again.
Because you have a whole other younger child.
Yeah.
Wild thing on your hands. Like, how are you supposed to have all hands on deck?
Yeah.
Also be alone. Also have a whole other child.
Yeah, I know. It feels like a lot because it is a lot.
It is a lot.
So, yeah, I'll feel better. He's fine. We get to skip everything today, so it's kind of like a breath
vacation.
Yes, it does feel like vacation. You always say that too when you like skip a day or need to skip a day for some reason. You're like, I'm free.
I am on vacation.
Yes, it's great. So I feel like, should we like dive into the nitty gritty of tips?
Let's dive into the nitty gritty. I'll give you my quick
recap.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. See, I'm in my own head that I'm like, screw you, Danielle. I don't care.
That's not what I thought at all.
Oh my gosh,
not what I thought
at all. What's going on with you? I'm so sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I have, as I shared I think the last time we recorded was end of March.
Yeah.
So that OIT episode where I was like really going through it.
Yeah.
Was end of March. It's now the 2nd of May. It's very beginning of May.
Yeah.
And I think I had like a 20-day streak of not having any kind of panic. Like, I was able to dose and just dose, and not, I didn't have any sort of like panic attack, panic moment,
heart
panic
racing.
anything. No heart racing. Yeah. I was okay. And then, I also have been building back up to get to my original dose.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it's like 4/5 of a peanut.
Okay.
It's not a peanut. Like, seeing peanuts on your counter is wild to me. Yeah. It's a bomba.
Right.
So it's
the peanut snack, like a Cheeto puff. But
exactly. In peanut butter form.
Yeah.
So Not literally. Okay, that's enough.
You're like, oh,
no pun intended.
Like yeah.
Pun intended.
Yes.
Yeah. But so the win was that I made it back up to that dose. Mm-hmm. The win was also that I had 20 something days of getting back to being able to dose, and it just being this part of my morning where I am not very active, heart rate down, whatever. And then the day before yesterday, panic, full blown.
Right.
Runaway train heart rate. I got it under control in like 5 or 6 minutes both times.
Which is a huge win.
A huge win. So
improvement.
My body handled it. I guess the histamine did not fly around too fast to happen what happened originally.
Yeah.
And I feel like nothing can get me down. Like on the way over here, I was like, I might possibly break the speakers on my car because the music was up so loud. I was like, thought I was in a club.
Were you singing Tortured Poets Department?
No, it was like, it was like high school dance.
Okay.
Like Papa Americano. Like I was like,
yes.
so just like, yeah. I was just like feeling it because I went through the worst of it again.
Yeah.
But today, no problem whatsoever.
Yeah. Similar to our outfits being complete opposites today. I'm in all, if you're just listening, I am literally in all black. And she is in the most springy, colorful pink and red and yellow dress.
I'm ready to go like twirling around Turks and Caicos or something.
And I'm like basically going to a business meeting or a funeral. I don't know.
Well, we said that we were giving Wicked vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're giving mad Elphaba. I'm giving mad Galinda.
Yes. I just need to paint my face green.
Yeah. I think like the takeaway there, something that I want to hold on to is like you can really be going through it, and each time I'm on the other side of it, like I'm better for it. I'm able to recover faster. It wasn't 2 months of having panic attacks every day. It was 2 days, and then I had a third great day. And like I'm still back up at my old dose. Like I'm still handling the old dose. I'm still doing it. I'm not going back down to like all the way back to have to build back up.
That's incredible.
So,
and today was
a win.
Total
no
win.
big deal.
That's
worked through it.
That's amazing.
So I was a horseback rider growing up, a competitive dressage rider. And when I decided to quit, there was a time where I wanted to quit years before I actually did hang up my helmet. I was getting bucked off a lot. Like I was going to the ER a lot, like broke my clavicle, like terrible concussions. It was bad. And I remember thinking like if I was not in need of a hospital, I had to get back on the horse was like the rule.
Yeah.
At the barn. And I was like, this is the stupidest rule ever. But now I'm using that with dosing. Like if I decide that treatment just is not for me, I don't want to do this anymore, that's fine. But we're not going to make that decision when I'm bucked off. We're going to make that decision when I'm like, okay, actually, I don't want to ride it competitively anymore. I don't want to be a child athlete. I'm going to go to school like a normal college kid.
Yep. Never quit on a bad day.
Never quit on a bad day. So I just feel like I'm closer to being able to either continue updosing or make a decision that's not related to panic or fear getting the best of me.
Well, high five. I'm glad you're having this like strong moment, and I'll get back there.
No, we can't have a bad moment on the same day. Like when I'm having my panic, you're coming over and being like, okay, I'm going to open some goldfish. You want some goldfish? Yeah. We'll have goldfish. I'm like,
that's right.
Yeah. So we can just take turns.
That's true.
It's like a seesaw.
We trade, or we can both be good too.
Yeah, we would like that.
That would be great too. It's for
Ideal.
us both to be on highs.
Okay, let's jump into the nitty gritty of TIP.
Yes, and TIP is
so
what a lot of
different.
us say, but it stands for Tolerance Induction Program. And it's kind of a different take on OIT, oral immunotherapy. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's very similar in that you are basically trying to train your body to no longer fear a certain food protein.
It's like reprogramming the immune system.
Totally.
Yeah.
And what's kind of different or unique about TIP is that they don't just start you, like you're allergic to peanuts, you started with a tiny little microdose of peanuts on your day one. In TIP, they believe that we can start retraining the immune system by introducing it to foods that have biosimilar proteins to the food you're allergic to, meaning like a distant cousin of the peanut. So like
that your body isn't allergic to.
Right.
Okay.
So you are, say, starting, I don't know, like peanut is a legume. Like a lot of people start with peas, you know, and literally green peas or lentils or whatever, even soy, I think is slightly related to peanut. There are some, at the very, very beginning of treatment, you're given a list of recommended foods. And these are things that they ask you to eat 3 to 5 times a week. And that's before you even start active treatment. And these are things like fruits, like stone fruits, apples, pears. Some people need to eat chicken or beef, sometimes, like one of ours was almond. He's always eaten almonds safely. He is anaphylactic to a few of the tree nuts, but almond has always been safe. So that was in his recommended foods instead of his like dosing plan that we were supposed to eat 3 to 5 times a week. Again, kind of training the body far, far, far in advance to start recognizing these biosimilar proteins as safe and okay and build them up almost in the body.
You know what, that Finding Nemo, the shark, where he goes, fish are friends, not food.
Yeah.
That is what is going through my head when you're like, we're retraining the body to recognize this is not.
The body's the shark. Yeah. Saying this over and over again. Yeah. You're telling it like, these are safe. No big deal. Yeah. You know, and then you start on this path. Everybody who goes in, the first thing you do when you sign up for TIP is you do a call, and they get all of like your history of anytime you ever had a reaction, anything that you're like curious about, even how often do you eat certain foods. So they had this whole questionnaire that we had to fill out that like had so many foods, and you had to list like, I eat it often, as in, you know, multiple times a week or every day. I eat it sometimes, or really sporadic, or I never eat this food. You know, answering for your child. Some people start very young. I think the youngest age they're taking is about 18 months.
One of my
like
best friends, she started her son at like the earliest possible. I think he's 18 months.
Yeah, something like that. Like, I could be off, but
like he does not even speaking. A toddler.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, parents are having to fill this out like, oh, I mean, there's a lot of foods that an 18-month-old hasn't quite eaten yet, you know?
Yeah.
So you're answering all these questions. Then you have a kind of phone consultation where they tell you a little bit more about the structure of the program, what you're going to possibly be getting yourself into, the payments, you know, all of that. It's very expensive. A lot of it's not covered by insurance.
If any.
Yeah. I mean, some of the like more just medical appointments, like the billing codes for like going into the office, like a lot of times an insurance company will cover that. But then there's specific tests that they do. And then there's also just the general program fee that is not covered. They also do very unique blood testing, which we'll talk about in a second, but that is generally not covered by most insurances. So it's very expensive.
It's like you have a new mortgage.
For sure.
Yeah.
Way more than a couple mortgages.
Yeah.
When you factor in if you don't live there. So this program right now, it's only in California. There are 2 locations in Long Beach, California, and in San Diego now. And I think the next one they're trying to open is in like the Bay Area, so Northern California. But yeah, so after the phone consultation, you decide you want in. You basically pay your first tip fee, which is not cheap. I think it's like $1,400 a quarter.
Or at least
something
at this
like
time, or at least for when you guys entered it.
Yes.
It could be totally different.
Totally. Yeah. They did increase it not that long ago, but you pay that, and then you schedule your first visit, which they call onboarding. And this is when you basically go and do all of the testing. So they have a huge like panel that they put on your back, a skin test. The way that they do it is it's not a prick. They actually have the protein in a patch, and they put it on your back.
Wow.
And you leave it for 24 hours. So the way that I am not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I am only telling you in layman's terms as an allergy mom, but apparently the back, like the skin on the back, can sort of replicate what would happen in your gut. So they use it as an indicator of like, yes, you might be allergic to it, but also like you might have stomach issues. So like if milk pops up from the patch test as like really bad, then they might suspect that like when you're dosing through milk as an allergy, like if you're allergic to milk, that you might have like gut symptoms. It just is one marker of information. So it's not like an indicator, yep, you're allergic, right? You know, it's more of this is one piece of the puzzle that we're going to use to determine your plan. They also do the blood testing, which this is
is a whole other can of worms.
Yes, that should be a whole episode on blood work and how to get their kids through that. But Graham actually, I mean, he's had to do it at least 5 times, if not 6, just over the course of his life. And he's not even 6 years old. He does so much better than I bet most children would, but
he's special.
Yeah, he's a strong kid. But yeah, the lab, they had their own personalized lab. So, and I think the main doctor, Dr. Randawa, who maybe we should have on sometime if he would join us. But it's his own lab.
That's what I was going to ask. Is he like the one who designed the program?
Yes.
Or like,
so he kind of came up, I think he was like a researcher for a long time and a practicing physician. And then he kind of came up with this model. Another thing that's really unique about it is that they use AI to come up with these plans. So they have all of these like markers of information in basically like a supercomputer, and they do like computer learning to really individualize each person's plan based on all of this like information they have on proteins and biosimilarness, and again, these markers of information that they get via the testing that they do.
It sounds like a sci-fi movie.
It does.
It is.
Yeah, it is. It's way beyond my like knowledge level.
Yeah.
But I am definitely glad it exists. I think there are some, what's the word I'm looking for? There are some criticisms of the program.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Like, how long is the program? Or at least for Graham, everybody's different.
His,
like a total of
his
how many
is going to
years?
be probably 3 years.
Okay. I have a couple of friends from college whose babies are in the program.
Yeah.
I have plenty of people that I follow online whose kids are in the program. Talking to you, I feel like I'm really familiar. And as somebody totally on the outside, I hear really strong, like I follow a girl who's totally has food freedom, and she like joined like very near the cutoff. So she's not as old as I am, but she's in her 20s, eating at Thai food restaurants and Snickers. And I'm like, what in the world?
Right.
And you see those sorts of success stories. And then you hear these people like rumblings of being like, this isn't real, or this is the criticisms of like, this wasn't what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And your past life, you were an investigative news reporter.
Yeah.
So if anybody is going to drill down into the facts and see all sides, it would be you. So I'm curious sort of like that side of it.
Yeah. I think when I tried to look into it and decided like, is this going to be something we do or not? I found everything online I could about like the negatives or the naysayers, like what the dropouts, the people who quit the program because of X, Y, and Z.
The dropouts.
I mean, that sounded bad, but you know what I mean? The people who dropped out of the program.
They did.
And I really wanted to know why. Like, what was your key reason? And there were different ones out there. Some people, it just didn't work for them. And like, that's going to be everybody, you know, they do accept anyone. When I started to look into treatment in general, my doctor here in Austin said, he's not a candidate. Like, we do OIT, but we only do it for peanut. So Graham had other allergies. So I was like, okay, cool. But actually that's the easier one, in my opinion, to avoid having a child with multiple allergies. So like, do I really want to do this if I'm only getting rid of one? And then secondly, at the time, he had told me he had to be at least 4. I wanted to start earlier. And thirdly, he said he wasn't a candidate because his numbers, like his blood work numbers, were too high.
I hear a lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot.
And so whenever I found TIP or learned of TIP, it was like, they said they'll take anyone, and you know, even young kids, and they will do all the allergies basically at one time and treat any kind of food. And so it was like, it felt to me as a former investigative reporter, while it was like, wow, my immediate thought was, too good to be true.
Yeah.
No way. Like, I'm like, there's something shady going on. They're making all these promises. Look at this marketing. I mean, now I'm in marketing. So it's like, I have both sides of it where I'm like, okay. So I did reach out to people. I talked on the phone to people who hated did it, found out, discovered things that they didn't like, and said like, this is horrible, this is a scam, you know, and dropped out. And I mean, we're very strongly against it.
Wow.
And I was like, great, you're the person I want to talk to.
Thank you for telling me everything.
Tell me why. Tell me everything. And then there were some other people that I talked to online. And there were a few key things. And again, this is not me saying like,
do it or don't.
Or that tomorrow it could come out that it is a giant scam of some kind. Like, I'm not saying that is not in the realm of some possibility.
You're just the allergy mom who has done a lot of research with a dang good head on her shoulders. Like, I don't trust anyone as much as I trust you. You're like, I don't know. I'm like, Yeah.
And, you do have to follow your gut in some ways, but I needed the information too.
Totally.
And so a lot of the things that kept coming up were, number one, that you would have to dose through foods, meaning like when I say dose through, like our cycles are between 8 and 12 weeks where we're building up certain foods. So if it is a almond, you're starting with a almond protein in a gummy that is tiny amount. That's like too small to even see.
Yeah.
So they put it in this,
weigh it yourself.
Right. So you get it in this gummy form and you do that for a while. Maybe even multiple cycles of almonds if you're super, sensitized or allergic to it. And so over these courses of these cycles, you build up. Well, when you're at the very beginning of your plan, and again, everybody gets this individualized plan. There's like this chart that they show you 3 columns: anaphylactic allergies, sensitized allergies, and then tolerant, things you're completely tolerant of. And they use all these testing, the blood test, the back test, the history, to come up with this plan via this supercomputer that they use and all these pinpoints of information. So your plan has this middle column that's sensitized. And a lot of times these are foods that you are actually eating.
You were like, I pre-program, I eat sesame all the time.
Right.
And it says you're allergic, but you're sensitized, essentially. Right. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if it's in that middle column, they're not saying you're allergic, but they are saying there's kind of 2 halves, and we're getting into the real nitty gritty, but like 2 halves of the sensitized column. The one closer to the tolerant, they say your body is like registering as like not a red flag, but a kind of like I noticed this, but you're never going to see any like symptoms. The side that's closer on the sensitized column to the anaphylactic, you might so your belly might hurt, but you're not like having a reaction. Or maybe like sometimes you might get like redness on your mouth, like as a baby if you're feeding them, but you're never having anaphylaxis. So these are things that your body is reacting or like responding to, but not necessarily allergic, not going to be at risk of anaphylaxis. So some of these foods your child is eating already. And what they'll tell you as part of your plan is, okay, for cycle 1, we're dosing through peas.
And you're like, he's good with peas.
Yes. And so a big complaint of the program from a lot of people is that like they're taking your money, and meanwhile they're taking your money, right? Like
$14,000 worth of your money. Yeah.
Yes. And so they're like stretching it out or making you do these things that aren't necessary because you're already eating it regularly and fine. So in their brain, they're saying like, this isn't necessary. Why are we not skipping ahead to these other things? But to me, when I dialed back on that and I said, but wait a second, on the website, it's telling you what they're doing. You can eat that and not have a reaction, but maybe you're eating it once every couple months or once a week or, and your body, in order to be ready for the thing down the road, needs that consistently in increasing amounts in your body. Again, this is this is what they're saying to you already on day 1 that they're going to be doing.
You're like, did you not read their welcome impact info?
But it can be confusing because one thing I'll say is like Graham ate soy yogurt every day. Like that was his safe yogurt that he enjoyed. And we had on our plan to dose through soy yogurt or dose through soy. And I contact them and I'm like, look, I'm all about the similar protein thing, but like he's literally eating this every day. Like this, we have a limited diet. This is one he likes. We eat it every day. It has protein. So we're like excited about that he likes it, And they were like, oh, weird. Like, because normally in that case, it's something you're eating, but not on a regular schedule. But they're like, if you're eating it on a regular schedule, well, then turns out, like I went back and I looked at the packet of information, and when they had soy on there, I said like moderate eat. Like he ate it sometimes, not regularly. So
not
like
every single day, this is his breakfast.
So like, again, they don't just look at blood tests that can be inaccurate. They don't just look at skin tests, which can be inaccurate. They go off of your given history. And so that is really important. I would say for anyone who is thinking about the program is like really, really think about telling them exactly what you're eating and how much of it you're eating, because that will 100% go into what your plan looks like. Sorry, if somebody is calling me.
Allergy mom things. You should answer.
I'm
Do it.
We can keep rolling. Hold on one sec. Hello, this is Sarah. Hey, doing well. How are you? It's the nurse.
The nurse?
Okay. Is he right there? Can I talk to him? Okay. It's the nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, baby, how are you? You say your hips are hurting? And if you need something and you really don't feel right, you let them know, okay? Bye-bye. Bye-bye. He's okay.
He's okay.
Yeah.
Or do you think that he's constipated?
I don't know. Maybe.
And his hips hurt?
Yeah, he has said that before, like when he has to go potty. And I think
When he was like laying, you said he was laying funny?
he said he was doing free centers and laying on his belly. So I don't know. I mean, again, such an aware child.
Such an aware child.
So I'm so glad.
Oh my God.
You what?
Getting a call from the nurse though.
Yeah, in the middle of this episode.
After a reaction.
Oh
I don't
my
care about the
gosh.
episode.
Yes.
Literally.
But
Do you want to leave and go to the school right now?
No, I think I'm okay. I need to keep my phone on loud though.
Let's keep it on loud.
And now I don't even remember what we were talking about.
It was the biosimilar foods. I literally could care less about this. Like,
I know.
all I care about is Graham and if you want to go.
I'm okay.
Okay.
I will go soon, but let's try to like
wrap it up.
Yeah, or just like make sure we're getting to the point instead of like me rambling on forever.
You're not rambling on. I promise I would redirect, but you're not rambling on. This is going to be so valuable for somebody considering tip.
And I mean, I'm okay with leaving that in the episode. Like I want people to see that like this is life, right?
This
like,
is having an allergy life. As someone who panics, like I don't have anybody to help me, to monitor me, to do anything. Like the dog isn't going to do anything except for like bark when the truck goes by. So like seeing the way that you hold yourself with such grace and calmness, like even though like I could see like your stomach drop physically, like it's the nurse, but the way that you stay calm is like, if I could get like 10 ounces of that and like get an IV of that, that would be game changing. Like you handle it so beautifully. Like if you panic, he's going to panic.
Right.
So like asking him the right questions.
Yeah. Just doing my best. Oh my gosh.
I'm over here being like,
allergy life never ends.
Let's go to the school right now.
Yeah.
Let's go to the school right now. And you're like,
it'll be okay. Yeah. And again, I don't want to not make it like, it is a big deal, right? Like it is a big deal to have had a reaction, to get a call from the nurse. And like, I do feel icky, but like also I don't want to panic and I don't want to rush over and make it seem or feel bigger than it is when maybe it's not that big of a deal.
Totally. That is so helpful for the future. And also like allergy life, like this, it's not like this happened one time ever.
Right.
It happens.
Yeah.
Whether you're in treatment or not.
Yeah.
So like handling it well, because it's happened in the past and it's probably going to happen in the future. Like,
yeah.
Wild. Oh my God. Okay. You were talking about,
I'm looking at my little notes here.
Yeah. You were talking about the yogurt, the biosimilar, and that was the biggest critique.
So I reached out to them. I said something and they were able, like I advocated for myself, for my child. And they said, oh yeah, let's outright challenge it. Like we don't need to dose through it for an entire cycle. Let's go ahead and challenge it at the next appointment. Meaning you eat the food in a certain quantity. And if you're good, then
it's marked
as good versus having to like dose through it. So I guess my tip there would be like, yes, give the most accurate information at the start. B, analyze your plan. People do make mistakes. You know, I don't think that was a mistake by them, but like there might be one on your plan. And so you need to like really dial down. You need to ask questions. You need to advocate always in any situation, medical. And then don't be afraid to like ask for what you want, you know, or what you think you need, but also understand that like they do have a formula and a system in place. And at some point you have to decide like, I am in this. Like if you're choosing to sign on, you have to trust the process to a certain degree. Again, that's not saying go in blind, but it is saying like, you're only going to make yourself miserable if you're constantly like worried and like looking for the bad stuff, you know?
I find myself at appointments, that's like such a good tip of like, if you're deciding to do this, like nothing's ever going to be perfect. You're going to have these pros and these cons. And if your gut says we're going to give it a try, then you have to like fully buy in and try. I find myself at my OIT appointments, my doctor is the most patient man in the world. And he'll come in and be like, today is XYZ amount of milligrams. And I'm like, really? Are you sure? Do you think that's a good idea? And he looks at me like, just like not invalidating me. He's just like giving me a moment to like catch up with myself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, of course, you're the doctor. Yes. You've done this a million times. But what about for my age? What about for my anxiety levels?
Like, are you
sure?
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, so this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you're in a good, are we doing this? Are you doing the appointment or you're not? And I'm like, I am. I'm doing the appointment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's for me as an extreme anxiety girly, it never goes away.
Yeah.
The urge to be like, are you sure?
Yeah. I mean, there is a healthy amount of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other critique that the program I think gets a lot is that it is very expensive and inaccessible. So to a lot of people. So I think, you know, them having their own lab, a lot of people are like, why can't we just go down to Quest Labs, like in our own neck of the woods and pay $30 via a copay and get this lab work done? I mean, why does it have to be this like special lab work? And I won't lie and say like I got any specific answers. I mean, they do have, again, this whole like supercomputer of data points and information that they store and access to make these plans. So I mean, I think that that's the reason. But again, who knows? Like, could they use the more general, like regular lab work stuff to come up with that and then put it in their computer? Like, I don't know, you know, like, are they charging us too much? At the end of the day though, I personally felt like doing nothing, which is what I kind of felt like the option I had was do nothing, because I didn't have an OIT program at the time that I thought was going to be for us.
Your doctor said you can't.
No, right.
His numbers are too high.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, or am I going to do this and maybe pay too much money? And too much is, you know, obviously a relative term. Like, is it too much if it works? No, I'll pay anything.
I'll literally pay anything.
And then some people will say, well, they're capitalizing on that, right? They're capitalizing on like your fear and the like want and desire of parents to do anything for their child, because they claim food freedom for these kids. So not a cure, they call it remission, but they are saying that at the end of this, he'd be able to eat whatever he wants, whenever he wants, in whatever quantity he wants.
And also like break the rules afterwards, like go run around.
Right. Yes. No qualifying
factors. Like he can get in a jacuzzi.
Yes.
He can run around in the snow. Like,
ideally, I think some people do have super sensitive systems and bodies where it takes a long time to get there. So even after he graduates, I mean, I've talked to some people who they still have some like strict rules around it. Now, are they at risk of like going into anaphylaxis and having a life-threatening reaction anymore? Probably not. Like, it's very, very low. Except if like they had the perfect storm, right? Like if they were super overheated, had just like run a marathon, then chowed down on a Reese's, and then they were also getting sick, and you know, all these different immune things. Like I don't think they're claiming that you could never, but they're saying in general, everyday life, like you should be at food freedom.
Yeah. Cross-contamination in a factory of a packaged item that you're eating is okay versus before could land you in the hospital.
And we're already there now with the cross contacts. So
insane.
I mean, we've been in active treatment about 2 full years, and he's cleared egg completely. He can eat it any form, anytime, any place.
What?
Crazy. Wild. And then milk, we are cleared for cross contact, meaning he can have things that say may contain. He can have things that were like made, like a cheeseburger that's grilled on the same grill with his burger. He can't eat the cheese, but he can.
I can't imagine. Yeah. Like if somebody told me like this omelet was made in a skillet that had just been roasting peanuts, I'd be like, you good?
Yeah.
The fact and that's the equivalent in my brain as like a cheeseburger.
Right. Sorry, I'm just double checking that my phone is on.
Double check.
Yeah. So yeah, we've made a huge strides already, and I'm hopeful that we can get, especially for milk, if peanut just gives us like the worst trouble and we get to a point where we're like, okay, he cannot get past eating 4 peanuts. I don't think I'm going to be like that sad. I mean, to the fact alone that if he can eat 4 peanuts, like I feel like he's safe. Like he can just avoid peanuts.
To accidentally eat 4 peanuts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas milk, like I will be a little bit shattered if we've done all of this and he cannot go have an ice cream cone or go eat a piece of pizza at the birthday party. That is what I want. That is what I need for my kid.
So interesting to me because my parents were told I was lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
Now knowing what I know about the immune system and allergies, I would say it was an allergy.
Yeah.
Multi-systems, like not normal things. And I grew out of it when I was in between 3rd and 4th grade. I went to summer camp. I told you this story.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I told in the podcast.
I think you did.
I did. Yeah. So, but I remember like my life before and after. My parents nor I, like nobody ever told us we should be afraid for this. This was life threatening. We didn't know. But I remember just knowing, like being able to have an ice cream, like being able to eat pizza was a wild difference, especially for a kid.
Oh, it's huge. It's in everything. But I did want to say, like, talking about the barriers to the program, obviously we've talked about the expense of it. If you don't live in California, we have to fly every 10 to 12 weeks. I mean, we haven't even gotten there in this episode yet because I've been so distracted by things. But like we have to fly every 10 or so weeks out to California. That's airplane tickets, rental cars, Airbnb/hotel, like activities while we're there, food while we're there. I mean, it is very expensive on top of the tip fee, on top of the insurance doesn't cover it, medical costs.
Okay, but on top of traveling with a small child with an allergy.
Right, like, which is like anxiety inducing.
Yeah, some people don't even travel with their allergy kid.
So huge barrier to entry. Which is unfortunate. So expense, the travel, picky eating is another question I get all the time. Like my child is such a picky eater. How am I going to get them to drink camel's milk? You know, because that's another thing in this program, these biosimilar proteins, they're not just other like normal foods. For milk, we started on camel's milk, went to mare's milk. So horse milk. Yeah. Some people do donkey milk. That wasn't in our program. We had to do ghee, which is like clarified butter. We had to do sheep yogurt.
How do you get him to eat ghee?
So that's the thing. I mean, it was horrible. And again, sorry guys.
Don't be sorry. Other podcasts, people can get annoyed at noises. This podcast, know that it is possibly the school nurse telling you
That's
things.
right. That's right.
Everybody listening understands.
Yes. So what I'll say is I think starting at a younger age with Graham helped. So while he is an extremely, I say selective eater because I think picky is like, it has such a negative connotation, but
I would love to go against Graham in a picky eater challenge.
Yes, he is.
I genuinely wonder who would win. Knowing he's had camel and mare's milk, I think I would win.
Okay, maybe so. Yeah. Yes. I think, you have to get creative as a parent. Like, of course, one thing that I was always told is don't try to throw too much at it at one time. So like if you're given something, you're like, oh, I can make this into a muffin. Like don't. Because first of all, you have to do this constantly. So that's a lot of work on top of everything else that you're having to do. So like keep it as bare as possible. Find like a vehicle that you can put these things in. Like for example, Graham likes cookie butter. It's literally like those Biscoff cookies, like blended up into a sweet dessert paste.
Yeah.
And he would have an entire jar of it. So like we basically put like all of his nuts, seeds, and flowers, like we put it in that. And he's also like a texture kid, so it kind of surprises me that he's okay with that. But I think, you know, again, these amounts build up so little at a time that it does kind of give your child a little bit of gradual like introduction into things before they're like, eat 4 huge spoonfuls of this disgusting mess, you know. But if it's sweet enough, honestly, like for the milks, the goat milk was our enemy, and like we had to put like an entire teaspoon of this chocolate powder. We put an entire teaspoon of chocolate syrup. Like the Hershey's chocolate syrup actually doesn't have dairy in it. We had to put like simple syrup on top of that. I mean, like just like really, really sugary stuff to make it palatable for him.
I am half Mexican.
Yeah.
And my grandmother, who was on my mom's side is Hispanic side, she calls it cuchinadas.
Oh.
And whenever I would like make potions in the kitchen, like trying to make slime or whatever, she would come in the kitchen and be like, Lita, are you making cuchinadas? You guys have been making cuchinadas for the past 2 years.
Yes, we have.
Like weird,
yes,
gross spoonful, mare, camel, donkey. What?
Yes. The ghee we would put in like hot chocolate. So I would get him like a safe milk that was super chocolatey and then like heat it up and put the ghee in it, like melt it down and then put a bunch of marshmallows on top. I mean, it is not easy. This program is so hard to get your kid to eat things. Also, they might love something for a week and then they're tired of it. So then you have to get creative. I mean, it's like there's so much more than just the money and the time and the fear. It's like the having to just be constantly nimble and like figure things out with your kid.
And like, what does that look like when like he won't eat the whole dose?
So, I mean, my goal was always to like figure it out, like get him to finish it somehow, some way. Even if you had to like then try something different. If he absolutely wouldn't, like one big thing I did was like, don't try to push it. Like I felt like in the long haul, in the long run, it was going to be better to have a day where we didn't do something like in maintenance. Now dosing is different. Like you kind of have to, right? Like, I mean, you don't have to, but like, it's way more like you need to make this happen kind of thing. Maintenance are the foods that you've already cleared. So
it's a little bit more forgiving.
Yeah. And so I'd rather say like throw in the towel that day, come at it with a new brain and new ideas the next day and skip it rather than like push something on him to where then he's going to be like not wanting to do it anymore, or like get really frustrated by the process. So yeah, constantly figuring those things out too. But basically to go back even like to what this program is, you know, you have your chart, you have your plan, foods you're treating, biosimilar foods to those foods that you're eating beforehand. And then you have a number of visits. So like Graham had 13 visits. Onboarding where you do the testing doesn't count, so that's really 14. And then they call it Tolerance 2 and graduation, which are also not in the like numbered plans. So really 16? Add 3 to your number.
Oh my gosh, it's a lot of airplanes.
It's a lot. That's 16 times that we'll
I'd be like, we're moving to Long Beach.
I know.
Boys.
We have thought about it. But yeah, so each time when you go, the foods that you have been treating, meaning eating gradually in increasing amounts in the afternoon, evening, early evening, you go to the clinic on your next visit. You challenge those foods, meaning you eat them usually at double the amount that you last did at home. And then you work out for 5 minutes. So he has to raise his heart rate a certain amount. And if he has no reaction, then he's cleared that food. Wow. So then that food moves to maintenance. So maintenance are the foods that you eat in the morning, every single morning, to maintain that tolerance. And so those foods, that is honestly the harder part. Now I would say getting into like the big leagues of the allergens, dosing has become hard in that it's anxiety inducing, but in the beginning it all seems doable, and then you keep adding things to maintenance. Each trip you're adding like 2 or 3 more things to maintenance,
and you're like, this is a Thanksgiving meal every day.
It is
on a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old.
Now because he's in kindergarten, I mean, he has to do it before he goes to school because there's not enough time. There's a buffer period, they call it, between your maintenance foods and your dosing foods of 4 hours. So there's not enough time by the time he finishes eating or like finishes eating, like if we did it when he got home from school, to then have 4 hours and be able to do it because there's a rest period after dosing.
And you're like, this kid needs to go to bed, not at 11 p.m.
Exactly. And so it's a puzzle.
OIT too. The mental gymnastics is insane.
It is.
Like constantly doing the math of the time and this, and oh my gosh, and would I overdose if I did this on this time because it was 2 hours different yesterday? It's like,
yeah,
I was an English and history girl.
Right.
I was not a math and science girl. Like this is not, this is not like a STEM. I'm not a STEM girly.
No, yeah.
It feels like requires a STEM brain. But your husband's an engineer.
That's true. He helps with a lot of, he does all of our charts. We have this like giant chart on our refrigerator that we like check things off each day. And yeah, it's a lot. It feels like the Matrix sometimes.
Whenever I go over, I'm like, what was on the counter?
Yeah.
Buckwheat, peanut, walnut.
Yeah.
Like where can I sit?
That's right.
Yeah.
Like just maybe not the kitchen. Yeah. Avoid the kitchen at this point. Yeah. So, I mean, each of these appointments, they're really exciting. They're usually 2 days at the beginning when you go for launch, which is when you like learn all the information and challenge a bunch of foods and intro a bunch of foods, like that second appointment that you go. It sometimes is like 4 or 5 days, but then from there on out, it's usually like 2 days, and you go 1 day for challenges. And then the next day you go back to the clinic and you do introductions. So these are the foods that then you will dose through for the following cycle, like the next cycle. And then you repeat, rinse and repeat, right? Like then those foods you've worked up to a certain amount, you go to clinic 10 weeks later, you challenge those foods, they move to maintenance. So now at one point, I think we had like 16 foods. Sometimes those foods drop off from maintenance and go to like once a week after you redo blood work and see how your body is responding. So Graham's made a ton of progress. But then of course it builds again, right? So like you're like, okay, I only have these as dailies. And then your next appointment, you're adding more to maintenance, which is good because you've cleared them, but it's really hard once they add up. So yeah, I overall, am really satisfied with the care. I do trust the process. I do not think it's a perfect program. I think there are things that could be better in terms of, I don't know, they've changed the system on how like you reach out when it's not an emergency, just ask a basic question. And like, that's annoying. Sometimes you're like, I'm paying all this money. Why do we not have this or that? Why am I having to bring something to the appointment? Like, but I think about when I just go for my annual checkup, right? Or like any doctor appointment I've ever gone to. And am I ever truly satisfied? No. You know what I mean? There's always a hiccup. There's always something that is annoying about it. So like, I think that people who expect it to be perfect, like you're living in a dream world, but if it may not be for you. For us, it's working so far. For us, I'm confident that we can get to a really good spot, whether it be food freedom or close to it. He has seen, a lot of success, and we've felt like supported along the way. So there's 4 bajillion more things I could say. And I do think that we should maybe take specific like tip questions, especially if we have somebody from the program on. I think it would be cool to like get a lot of really good questions answered.
The ones that you're like, I'm not a provider, I'm a mom. Like have those for them.
I think that would be perfect. And if you're listening to this episode too, I would say like send us your questions. We always ask for questions, and we're going to do a question and answer on this podcast. Maybe not related to tip, but it would be something we could totally answer in another question and answer segment. So if you have something that you're curious about when it comes to tip, feel free to send those questions in to EpiPod podcast. We're learning. EpiPodpodcast@gmail.com, and we can kind of collect those as well.
Before we move on to Q&A, I have a quick question for you. If you could zip back in time to when Sarah is just trying to make the decision about is tip for us or not, what would you tell that Sarah? Or would you tell, is there anything, knowing what you know now and going through things like last night, that you could tell you of 2 years ago?
I think I would say that as hard again, I did a lot of research before, so I think I knew more than a lot of people what I was getting myself into. Mm-hmm. But I think similarly to what I would tell someone who's like pregnant and about to have their first child is I would say like, it is going to be harder and more work and more draining than you could ever expect. However, it's also going to slowly, a little bit at a time, open up your life again. Like, allergies close a lot of doors. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say like we haven't always lived such a like wonderful life and that I don't love everything about my child and him being like
exactly who he is.
And yet we can't just accept invitations to anywhere. We can't just go to, a public place and be carefree and let him totally just be a kid. We always have to do extra things, extra planning, be extra vigilant, say no, and it feels really unfair. And whenever you get a little bit of that freedom back, whenever you taste a little bit of like, oh, this is what it feels like to not worry all the time, it's magic. Mm-hmm. And so I think I would describe that feeling and say, if that's your dream, if that's what you want for yourself and for your kid, then look into this or something else, but don't be afraid. Take it on. Mm-hmm. Take the next step. Look into it. Do what you can to make it happen. Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thanks for all your support.
This is a lot.
It's a lot, but it's what we have to do. It's what I feel like I have to do.
Let's jump into question and answer.
Let's do it.
Cool. This segment is brought to you by InchBug. It's a personalized waterproof label company for kids.
And the owner is actually an allergy mom herself. She is lovely. I use these labels on my kids' lunch boxes and water bottles, and man, do they stay put, even going through the dishwasher, hand washing, whatever, they're not going anywhere.
Love it. Find out more about InchBug in the show notes, and we also have a little discount for you guys. It's EpiPod 25. Sarah had, Graham is fine. He's safe. He's with the nurse. He's fine. But Ethan's soccer practice was canceled like extremely last minute, and so she has to zip across the city to go get her precious boy. I'm going to do the questions and answers. Question 1. My 10-year-old with food allergies has always been allergic to eggs. She has recently said no to trying new foods, even after I've called and spoke to the company confirming that it is safe several times, to where I think it's becoming a thing. How do I address this without forcing her to do something she isn't comfortable doing? I've been a huge supporter of her doing what makes her comfortable, but I also don't want to overlook this if it is something I should be worried about, if that makes sense. It makes total sense. Okay. I'm not 10, obviously I'm 32, and I would describe myself as an extremely cautious allergy girly. So I totally relate to your 10-year-old, where even if a package says peanut and tree nut free, I don't know this brand. I very much so would like to just stick with what I know is safe, like just existing and getting over my dose in the morning, or even without the dose, just existing. I'm tired of being brave after a certain point. Like there's only so much your plate can hold. And I'm like, what if I just didn't? What if I just gave myself a break and did the things that made myself feel comfortable? Food in my brain is like completely fuel. I don't look at it as anything other than fuel. It's a means to an end. It's not fun. It doesn't even necessarily need to taste that great. I just want what's simple, and I know it's going to fuel my body, and the end. Let's move on to the adventure and the fun parts of the day. So I very much so, because that's the way my brain thinks, I constantly don't want to try new things. So I don't know if there's necessarily a clear-cut answer to this, other than that I don't know if your daughter sees a counselor. something I wish that I had had a lot earlier in life is someone to support me with my food allergy anxiety. I think just I would have had the tools to manage the anxiety a lot earlier. We'll put it in the show notes, but the place where I found my food allergy specific therapist, she does other types of therapy, but she is very well versed in the food allergy world, and her child went through OIT. So I feel like I don't have to explain anything, but I found on the food allergy counselor's Instagram, there's a whole database by state of therapists who understand food allergy anxiety and are in your area. So I would recommend one, even if it's just like a monthly thing or a check-in or just like a couple of sessions with somebody to give her the tools to maybe not try the new things right off the bat, but better understand these behaviors and why she's doing them. And also they're going to be far more qualified to understand if it's a thing or if it's not. And that could maybe give you some peace too, for them to be like, this isn't a thing. Like, she's just keeping herself safe. I can speak from experience that I have developed my own things, and they started off small and then they sort of snowball. They're called safety behaviors. So whether it's like after I do my dose, I want to wipe it down multiple times, or I don't want to use the counter space where I know that the peanut dose has been, those sorts of things. But definitely I see it in eating out and even just like ordering a coffee or a glass of wine out. I have safety behaviors now that were never even a thought before because I let little things become bigger things. So all to say, as somebody who struggles with it, really figuring out a way to be brave and get over that safety behavior. In this case, being as sure as you can be that a product is safe, can really, very uncomfortable in the long term, broaden your horizons and not allow it to snowball. So I know that I'm not sure if that was helpful, but I totally feel your daughter and her mindset behind that. And I totally understand you not wanting for it to snowball. But I just want to commend you for a second by saying you really wanting to be her biggest supporter of her doing what makes her feel comfortable. Her gut is what's going to keep her safe, her intuition. And so not making her second guess herself and just continuing to support her in trusting herself, no questions asked, listening to her gut. That is so valuable. So big, big applause for you, Mom. Okay. Second question. This comes from a fellow adult food allergy girly. How do I politely tell someone that I do not want to talk about my allergy anymore? I feel this to my core. I feel like allergies unintentionally became my whole personality after, I think I was around 26 when my true food allergy anxiety really set in. And prior to a really bad accident and having to go to the hospital, I didn't even know my allergy was life-threatening. I didn't even carry an EpiPen. And so it was like a before and after event of I can live my life like totally carefree, kind of. I still managed my allergy. Like, I still knew it was severe, but I could live my life. Not even some of my closest friends, they knew I had an allergy, but it wasn't like this big deal. And now after that, and especially since starting OIT, it seems to dominate, I was noticing that it was dominating a lot of my conversations, if not every single one. My friends who care about me and want to know, and they want to check in, having conversations with my family when I'm visiting my hometown and I'm just like constantly having to manage me being in their space and not stepping on their toes, but also feeling safe. Dating, man, it just like takes over the conversation. As soon as they hear me order a drink, then they start talking about it. Then TikTok comes up, then the podcast comes up. And before you know it, it's like, oh my gosh, you know nothing about me. You only know about my allergy, which sucks because it's the least fun and least interesting thing about me. So I really have had to double down on this exact question where I just really have been valuing brevity recently. So when I go into a conversation being like, the allergy talk, we're going to be super brief. It's totally valid. And it makes me feel loved when a dear friend, we're catching up, we haven't seen each other in a month or two, and they're like, how's treatment going? Or like, how are you feeling with allergies? I know the last time we went out to eat, like you were so anxious about eating. Like, how's that going? I keep it brief. Could I talk about it for 30 hours? Yes, I could, clearly. Am I going to talk about that with somebody who isn't going to understand my point of view? And I'm going to accidentally end up feeling like I'm constantly needing to validate myself? That's 100% what's going to happen. So I approach it first by just holding myself accountable. This is going to be brief. I'm a verbose person. That's hard. So I challenge myself to only say 2 to 3 sentences about it. How's allergy going? I know you were really anxious the last time we hung out. You know, I am still dealing with food allergy anxiety. It's like a lifelong thing, but I'm really grateful to have a therapist who I feel like really has given me some tools. Immediately ask them a question about themselves. That's it. 2 sentences. That's it. And then turn it back on them. I have had to in the past, actually very recently, with a family friend who meant so well. She's very dear to me and to my family, and she meant really well, but she just kept asking and asking and asking. And I was done talking about allergies. We were at a restaurant, and I don't know about you guys, but talking about allergies at a restaurant can make being at a restaurant and trying to eat at a restaurant, or even just have a drink at a restaurant. If I wasn't anxious, now I'm anxious. So I just had to directly, after like the 3rd time of trying to reroute and trying to double down on brevity, I just had to say, talking about allergies, actually, like, I really am thankful that you're curious and I'm thankful that you care about me. And I know that's why you're asking, but talking about allergies can actually be really exhausting and give me more anxiety. So can we just not talk about it anymore? Like sometimes that's what it takes. You just have to be really direct if you've tried other tactics. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. Absolutely. Totally understand. Yeah, I think also people love to talk about themselves. So once you get them talking about like the new guy that they're seeing or their wedding registry, or are they trying to potty train their kid? Like as soon as you get them talking about something that's really big in their life, not only does it make them feel loved because you care about what's really big in their life going on, but it just gets them on a roll and it gets the attention off the allergies, and before you know it, it's over. I hope that's helpful. Okay, that's it for episode number 5. See you next week.